leading a new generation of Republican. This is the Grand New Party Update.
Thursday, October 1st, a 26-year-old gunman killed his English professor and 8 other individuals before taking his own life. According to reports, the shooter chose his victims based on their Christian beliefs and had access to a stockpile of firearms. President Barack Obama was quick to openly and admittedly politicize the debate as he called for America to emulate the policies of England and Australia. Now, Dennis, isn't the president justified in calling for some form of reform following this shooting?
I think he's calling for the wrong type of reform. But
do you think that there's any type of reform that might be done, or do you think this is something that, as a society, we have to accept, kind of like car accidents or something along those lines?
No, absolutely not. I think teachers should be able to pass background checks and have concealed carry permits. I think that there should be no gun-free zones, and that's the reform that I'd be looking for, is to get rid of these gun-free zones, which turns into shooting galleries for these deranged lunatics.
Now, per record, you have this shooting was in a gun-free zone. You had the Fort Hood shooting was in a gun-free zone. The Naval Yard shooting was in a gun-free zone. The Columbine shooting was in a gun-free zone. I could just go on. Pretty much all the university shootings were in gun-free zones.
Well, you look at Sandy Hook and you look at Charleston, but you look at one case now. It is an older case. University of Texas. A guy got to the bell tower and he started shooting people, sniping people from the top of the bell tower. And any time law enforcement tried to get close to the bell tower, he would shoot at them. So they couldn't move in on the bell tower. So they called up the citizens of the town, and the citizens of the town showed up and started giving him suppressive fire. And they pinned him down while SWAT teams were able to infiltrate the back of the tower and sneak up behind him. Without those citizens with guns, who knows how much longer that shooting would have went.
I should bring up historically, even before, because this is something it hasn't been brought up yet in this particular go-around, but a lot of gun control individuals seem to think that they didn't have these problems in the 1700s, and there actually were mass shootings in the 1700s, believe it or not. People would hole up inside a barn with 3 or 4 or 5 different firearms, and that would give them enough firepower to be able to shoot at anybody trying to approach the barn while they reloaded, and they would pick off individuals, and you'd have multiple casualties going on. So the Founding Fathers were aware of these sort of mass casualty events that were available with firearms, but at the same time, you also have mass casualty events in England and in China, where they have had, especially China, where they've had mass knifings going on.
Yeah, I can only think of one event recently where the gunman targeted a place where there were actually guns, but he did it in such a way. It was when the gunman in Pennsylvania shot those 2 officers, but he did it in such a way where he knew he wasn't going to get any fighting back. He was going to get enough time to get out of there.
Because you know specifically where the guns are, and you shot them. And that's part of, that's kind of like, you need a special license in many states to conceal carry, but open carry, even if it's legal, that does make you a bigger target if a gunman starts opening up. It's going to be the people who are open carrying that are going to be the first targets because they're a threat to the gunman, versus if you allow concealed carry, those people will be able to respond in a surprising fashion.
Yeah, but almost in every case, the gunman says a monologue or something before he starts shooting.
This guy, I understand he wrote a letter and he gave it to one of the people in the room.
Well, yeah, I did note that. What happened was he shot the teacher first, and he shot a couple of more classmates. Then he pointed out a student by the name of Matthew. They're not going to give his last name out. And he said, come here. And now Matthew thought he was going to die. And he handed him a letter, and he said, if you give this to the police, I will let you live. He took the letter, went to the back of the classroom, and sat there and watched the rest of the execution.
Yeah.
But imagine if that kid had a gun on him.
Or anyone.
Imagine if, while the gunman was shooting other targets, he snuck it out and took out that gunman.
There was a veteran injured in this shooting. Imagine if they had a firearm on them.
A hero was injured in the shooting.
Yeah.
He was He ran back into the building. He could have easily have walked away and done nothing, but he ran back into the building.
And what's interesting is there's going to be, as per usual, there's going to be 50 different ways of describing this guy's motivations. I know personally, I think that most of these shootings don't have any single motivation. I feel like each one's unique, dependent upon the individual who's carrying out the shooting. In this case, I understand that they actually found him writing in blogs about how he thought it was cool how mass shooters became famous overnight. So we've already agreed that we're not mentioning the shooter's name on this program.
Right. He believed that he was a loser since birth. And now you ask yourself, what makes someone's self-esteem that low? And then you look at, well, what is people from the Sandy Hook shooter, the Charleston Town shooter, the Charleston Church shooter, what do they have in common? Well, they all came from broken homes.
So that's that you think is a unifying factor?
I don't know if it's unifying, because I don't think Eric Harrison from Columbine came from broken home. I actually believe he was from a middle-class family, but his parents were never around. I think parents need to do a better job raising their kids, and I think that's a huge problem. When the father figure is not in place, then these kids get low self-esteem, and they act in such manners. I think if parents took a more positive role in kids' lives and built self-esteem through activities, then these things wouldn't occur like they do.
And I think I wrote a message following this attack, and I wanted to highlight this. I didn't write it. I don't have it out in front of me. But the message I wrote out was simply to the effect that when these sort of shootings occur, if you look at a lot of these shooters, these are people who were completely alienated in society in some way. And my message in these shootings is I feel like one of the best things you can do to save a life, and it's not simply in this. It's not really just in the shootings. It's in drugs. It's in crime. It's in 50 different ways that a person's life can go wrong. Be there for somebody. I know maybe you had a long day. Maybe you want to just go to the party. But if you see somebody who's obviously in need of some form of attention, whether that's speaking with them about a problem or just listening, be there for them. And this sort of stuff will be reduced.
Yeah, I think, as the family unit breaks down and, you have these kids who don't have a father figure in their lives, so he had no father to go to and say, hey, Dad, I'm having these issues. They don't go to the mom because they don't think the mom's would understand, or the mom's in a abusive relationship, or get into drugs and alcohol like a lot of single parents do, and it's tough. It's tough because they don't have anyone to go to, and they don't feel like they can go to the guidance counselor, and that's why it is important to build relationship with your classmates, even if they're different than you.
And we felt that this was significant enough of an issue that we each wrote a response of the week. I don't know if you want to go first or second, Dennis.
I will defer to you.
President Obama's response to the shooting itself was actually pushing for outright gun confiscation. And he was encouraging the media to report on the number of guns out there, the number of shootings, and to get these information about the United States shootings versus England or Australia or any of these other countries out there. Now, I think the president should read the numbers of the victims of violent crimes before and after gun bans instead. If he wants to talk about numbers, there are way more people affected by violent crimes after gun bans than there are victims of mass shootings. His solution creates more victims, it subverts liberty, it subverts the ability to defend yourself, and I'll also note that this is why we should never allow a gun registry in America, because President Obama is attempting to use this as a means of confiscating firearms from millions of people across the United States who haven't done anything wrong. Let me also say that if there should come a time where the government attempts to seize arms, such a time is when I believe the right and duty of the American citizen is to employ the right of self-defense in armed revolution. Because you can censor me. You can spy on my metadata. That's stuff I don't like, but I'm willing to tolerate it for peaceful acceptance to try and reform it peacefully. But once you try and take our firearms, to me, that is a measure of last resort for the citizen, and that should never be allowed to happen.
Like you said, I also wrote a response to the events that occurred last week. The events that occurred last week were absolutely sad, depressing, and will continue to happen, sadly, as we continue to move away from the moral society that this country was built on. There are two things that are key factors to this shooting. One, another shooter from a broken home. The divorce rate is on the rise in America because we don't have the morals and codes that we had back when our parents were getting married, back when their parents were getting married. There's no surprise that the divorce rate is climbing and the amount of mass shootings are climbing and other violence climbs. As long as we continue to treat marriage like a joke, like something you just sign up for and get your tax benefits for, as long as we don't take marriage seriously, which is the direction this country's going in, morals will continue to break down and things like school shootings will continue to happen. The second thing is he targeted Christians. He literally had them stand up in front of the class. And by an eyewitness account, he asked them what religion they belonged to. If they were Christian, they would get shot in the head. If they were another religion, the leg, the arm, maybe the torso. But if you were a Christian, one thing was sure in that room. You were marked for death. This has been happening around the world, not just in the Middle East, but here in America. Christians are under fire. The way of life that they live is under fire. They're being told they have to accept things like homosexual marriage, like abortion. Just the other day, a Catholic hospital was being sued by the ACLU for not providing abortions, which was against their moral codes. If you like the Christians or you don't like the Christians, at the end of the day, they're innocent people that are being hunted by evil people. And if you sit there and say nothing and do nothing, then you're just as bad as the one who's pulling the trigger. That is my response.
And on a lighter note, we've got our dropout of the week picks. I'm going to stick with Graham.
Yeah, no one has dropped out yet.
No one's dropped out yet.
Other people have weighed in on this. And, a coworker of mine said Rand Paul, and my older brother picked a Democrat. And although Democrats are there and probably will start dropping out, we're not doing Democrats yet. I'm going to stick with George Boltaki. He's still registering 0, and no one's talking about him. So I don't see how he stays in this much longer.
Well, I will note that Pataki and Lindsey Graham are tied in their percentage, at least according to Real Clear Politics. So may the best man win, Dennis. May the best man win.
We'll see.
Grand New Party Update is the intellectual property of Tony Zor and Dennis Rose. Voice of credits provided by Gino Devaney. Theme music, Namaste, by Jason Shaw, as discovered off freemusicarchive.org on the album Tech Urban Dance.